What's up guys, Frodo here, and if everything goes according to plan, this video is coming out on Black Friday. So if you guys are at home and you're not actually attending Black Friday, I appreciate it. I'm sure that you're missing out on a couple good deals, but I, as a retail associate, genuinely appreciate you. Getting over my petty complaints about Black Friday and having to work on those days, I actually had a really good idea. So if you guys read the title, you know what my idea was, but my idea was, what is it like to use a 2013 MacBook Air in 2018. Now I got this idea because where I work, the most common questions that I'm asked are what are going to be the Black Friday deals on the MacBook Pro, MacBook Air, MacBook, iPad, iMac, you name it. If it's got an Apple logo on it, I'm asked if there's going to be a deal on it. And usually there's a bit, but a lot of people still don't want to have to pay $1,000 for an Apple computer, which is usually where I start recommending an iPad. But what about the people who specifically want a well-optimized macOS experience? They don't want iOS, even if it is a little bit better than the one on the phone because you got it on an iPad. What about the people who genuinely want a file system, a full-fledged web browser, a full desktop experience with an entire array of ports, but they want to pay iPad pricing for it? Well, that's where I got this idea for the 2013 MacBook Air. Now, this specific example behind me is not exactly the perfect example of a pristine 2013 MacBook Air. In fact, it has a couple firmware issues with it where it doesn't like to boot sometimes, and I'm still working on that. But if you go through eBay, you can actually find a really, really good deal on some really pristine models. I was kind of surprised. The average pricing that I found was around $250, $300, and for an upgraded model, you can actually get up into the 400s, which is still below the iPad Pro. Now, keeping that in mind, this still performs slower than the iPad Pro. And I guess that segues perfectly into the performance of a computer like this in 2018. Now, this specific model has the base model Core i5 dual core. This was the 4th generation 4250U. Now, this was a Haswell generation processor designed to be a very power-efficient chip, not a very powerful chip. This specific model also only has 4 gigabytes of RAM and only has 128 gigabytes of storage. So it's definitely a budget computer, even if it's got the Apple logo on it. Now, like I was saying though, if you go with an upgraded model off of eBay, which will run closer to about $400+, you can get a Core i5, which is actually pretty impressive for a system like this, even if it is only a dual core, and you can bump it up to 8 gigabytes of memory, and this will actually go all the way up to 512 gigabytes of storage, which you can actually upgrade yourself. So if you're all right with 4 gigabytes of RAM and the Core i5, if you're a little handy, you can actually pop the back off of this and put bigger storage in it from a third party. Now, getting back to that 4 gigabytes of RAM, yeah, 4 gigabytes of RAM really shouldn't be enough for computers nowadays. In fact, 8 gigabytes is about average. 6 gigabytes is becoming not enough. But this is where Apple's optimization kind of makes this run a little differently than most. Now, keep in mind, I know the last video I did was a 2015 MacBook Pro in 2018 review, and I was praising it for how well it held up with high-end performance even in 2018. This is not a MacBook Pro. This is never and was never designed to be a high-performance machine to begin with. This was designed to be a college computer or a tablet experience, but with a full web browser in it and a full desktop operating system. It was never designed for video editing. So I'm not going to talk about that kind of performance with a computer like this. I'm going to talk about this computer as it would normally be used on a day-to-day basis for somebody who is looking for something of this caliber. So with Apple's optimization, 4 gigabytes of RAM will actually get you quite a ways in the general use category for this computer. I was able to browse the web and use it fairly comfortably and not have it stutter or have it slow down in any really noticeable way. And this kind of reminds me a lot of the iPhones and iPads and the way that they're optimized through iOS with Apple's top-down optimization. Because Apple has control from the bottom up, from hardware to software, this actually performs pretty well. And for the price point of $200 to $300 on eBay for a pretty reasonable model, I'm thinking that you're not going to complain too much about a few hiccups here and there. So yeah, this isn't exactly the best performing machine in the world, and it never really was, but it was never really meant to. Because with Apple's optimization, I was actually able to put a full copy of Mojave on this, along with some of the average tools that I use on a regular basis on my iPad, and this performed with those tools just as well, if not in some cases a little more efficiently than my iPad, because I was actually able to save files in a file system as opposed to just kind of hoping that iCloud took care of the rest for me. And because I was able to put the full version of all of the software I use on it, all of the same conveniences that I'm used to with my MacBook Pro and my iPad still carry over. I can unlock it with my Apple Watch just like I can on my MacBook Pro. I can pair up my headphones seamlessly just like I can with any of my Apple products. And in general, it's not bad to use, except for one big thing. And that big thing is what you interact with most of the time on this computer, which is the screen. So this screen, it's just bad. It's a 1440 by 900 display. It's a backlit TN panel, and it's just not great. You lose color as soon as it tips down or up or left or right, or basically any angle except for straight on. It just looks terrible. So unless you're looking straight at it, the viewing angle is pretty much write it off for photo editing or for watching a very high quality video. In fact, with a high quality video, the resolution alone writes this off as a reasonable display. The only thing it's really good at is document typing when you're dealing with a display of this, quality is not the right word, but a screen like this. Now, the old argument used to be that the screen was this bad because it was necessary in order to maintain the 12 to 13 hour battery life of this laptop, which is an argument that holds up until you realize that my Intel Core i9 32GB DDR4 RX 560 1TB solid state MacBook Pro gets 10 hours of battery life with, average use. And that's all you're ever going to do on this computer is average use, because it can't do any sort of heavier work. So yeah, that argument doesn't really hold up. I will say, however, the battery life on this machine is probably the best battery life I've seen on a computer this age. Most computers this old, you've probably either changed the battery out so you still have the same amount of battery life, or the battery life you're getting is, 2, 3, maybe 4 hours, and if you're really lucky, maybe 5 hours. During my review period with this computer, I have deliberately left it off the charger as long as possible, and I will usually average anywhere from 8 to 9 hours of battery life, and that's after this thing has been using the same battery since 2013, and it's gone through 500 battery charge cycles. So that's half of its charge cycle life done, and you're still getting 10 hours of battery life out of it. It was really impressive to me how well the battery actually performs on a computer this old. So there you go, there's a positive. That's a good thing about this computer is battery life. At this age, it performs battery-wise as well as a brand new iPad. So that's actually pretty impressive when you think about it. A couple other good things for those of you who aren't onto the USB-C Thunderbolt 3 hype train. It still has all the original ports that you're used to. Yes, your MagSafe port is still here, so you can trip over your cord as much as you want and not drag your laptop to the ground. You still have 2 full-speed USB 3 connections, an SD card reader, and you even have an original Thunderbolt 1 cable, which is good for docks and things. Another good thing for those of you who aren't a big fan of the butterfly key mechanism or just hate it for the dust problem, which has been fixed, by the way, so you can stop hating now. This computer does still have the old scissor mechanism key switches, which I'm used to the butterfly keys now because of my iPad, the wireless keyboard I use on my desktop, and the keys on my MacBook. But after, typing with this for a little while, it was good. I was more used to the old key switches when I had my old MacBook. I've kind of moved on now, but going back to it, it was fine. It's a keyboard, and I was more than happy with it. Plus, something else that you'll find on this that you will not find on any computer for $300 is a backlit keyboard. And these have been standard on MacBooks since about 2008, and this also has it, and it's very bright, and it makes it so nice to type in the dark. I know not a lot of people think that typing in the dark is a very common thing, but especially when I was in college, which is what this computer is aimed for, people in college, you do usually your best thinking when it's about 2 a.m. and you don't want to wake up your dorm mate, so you type with the lights off, trying to get that paper done just before the class the very next day. So having a backlit keyboard is actually a really nice thing. And then moving down to the trackpad, this is another thing where something better has come out, so I'm used to it, but going back to it, it didn't really feel outdated to begin with. It's just that something newer and better has come out. This is their old diving board mechanism keyboard, which was still extremely modern and pretty common still, but now that I'm used to the Force Touch trackpad, you never really realize how often you try to click anywhere on the trackpad, including up towards the top, which you can do on a Force Touch trackpad, but you can't do on one of these. The size is fine. I never really considered the size a bad thing until I started using a larger trackpad, and then I was just used to that extra real estate. And again, I have to keep reminding myself this is a budget computer, and this trackpad is better than almost anything that you'll find on a computer this price or less. I mean, the only Windows Precision trackpad that you can really find that's anywhere close to this price point is on the keyboard case that you buy for the Surface Go, and that itself is a $130 option that you're attaching to a $400 to $500 tablet, laptop, I don't know. So overall, do I recommend using a 2013 MacBook Air in 2018? It kind of depends on your use case and where you are with your computer usage. If you're like me and you do video editing or photo editing, anything like that on a daily basis where reliability, speed, and accuracy are very important, no, absolutely not. Don't go buying this because it's cheap and it's a Mac so you can go and do video editing with it. No, do not do that. This is not for you if that's the case. But if you're a college student and you're looking for a Mac so that you can have seamless integration with your iPhone, seamless integration with your iPad, which if you have an iPad, it's probably actually faster and a little bit better. But if you're in that situation where you want a full desktop operating system, a full-fledged desktop file browser, and not just the Files app on your iPad, and you're not really doing a lot of photo editing, you just want to save the photos that come off your phone, and you're not doing any video editing, and you just want to type some documents before class, make some PowerPoints for your next history class, or do an Excel spreadsheet for some reason. Algebra class, that's where you would probably use one of those. I don't know, I dropped out of college. If that's your use case, this is a completely reasonable way to get into that Apple ecosystem and not break the bank. I mean, $200 to $300, I even had that when I was a poor college student, and if you're willing to go light on a couple meals and maybe, not spend all of your money on other things like video games, you could absolutely pick up a computer like this at a fairly reasonable price and have a really great experience in the process. But 128 gigabytes is a little skimpy, so I'd put a little bit extra aside just so that you could get the 256 model. So what do you guys think? Would you rather buy one of these and have this be your first introduction to the Apple ecosystem, or maybe would you rather buy an iPad since they're about the same price and perform a bit better? Or are you one of the members of the PC Master Race who would rather comment about how you can build a computer for half the price of this and play Crysis in 4K or whatever? I don't know. What camp do you guys fall in? Either way, let me know in the comments while you're down there. Let me know what you guys think of this video format. I do genuinely enjoy making these videos. I spent a lot more time on the videography trying to make sure that it actually held up to the standard that I'd like to have on this channel. So let me know if you guys liked it. Leave a comment, subscribe, like, all that fun stuff, and I will see you guys in the next video. Make sure to be there. Enjoy Black Friday if you're going out, and have a good one.